Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sundays Are for Contemplation. I'm your host, Soph,
I'm Nicole.
and we're here with a very special guest today, August Ground. Hello, August. How are you?
Great.
Nice. So, for a little context for all of our listeners today, we first met August when he came to the final session of the Primavera Digitale residency. And then we also met in person about 2.5 weeks ago for the first time in the Primavera Digitale Art Festival that was taking place in Florence, Italy. So, August, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? If you're an artist, a collector, how long you've been in this space for, we're all ears.
Let's see. Yeah, I've minted quite a few pieces on Tezos. That was after a couple years primarily just collecting. My background is that I was educated as a visual artist and have worked in film and theater and been in some bands and um, published a bunch of poetry and I don't know, life in the arts, basically, one form or another. And then at some point, I was here in Colorado taking care of my mother. She was in poor health, and I was spending a lot of time online, and I kept coming across these worlds where people were making art. And
Mhm.
initially, I probably like everyone else came through the whole like I was in San Francisco at the time, so I saw the Bay Area Yacht Club stuff and all those like 10,000 piece PFP collections, and I was just like, oh god, what a nightmare. I mean, they were fine. Like from a graphic sensibility, it was cool. Like I got it, but I didn't really get the scope of what was happening in that sort of underground. And so, in any case, during that time that I was here, I just spent a lot more time sort of wandering through the digital corridors, as it were, and just fell in love with some of the art I was seeing. Mostly at the time on Tezos, I was collecting on ETH and some Solano, and I just kept getting pulled deeper into it because I felt like, as I said, my background was in, I have a degree in art. And from an art history perspective, I felt like I was seeing history in the making, so to speak, like the emerging of what I would say are canons of expression, like glitch based, pixel based, AI. Like they all sort of have a discrete aesthetic and logic. And it was just super exciting and captivating. And not only that, it was like a real time, I should say it is a real time global sort of a temperature taking of the zeitgeist. So in the traditional art world, it takes time for artwork to get to the gallery, to the museum, to the culture at large. I mean, obviously with social media, that moves faster now, but I had never seen anything that was so immediate and palpable, I guess, and captivating as the stuff I was finding. Long story short, I just found myself going not all in, but I did. I mean, I have maybe 7,000 pieces or something, and
Mhm.
then concurrently, it's also crossing that line. It's like, okay, now making the move to putting your own work up and trusting that, and minting some poetry and more digitally native pieces, and then just kind of falling in love with that process too, and the possibilities that that opens and the doors that opens. So that's sort of the general overview. And I've been on, a number of podcasts. My friend Pocobelli's, who I
Mhm.
met in person at
Mhm.
this
Yeah.
event, he's amazing, and he had me on his show a couple times. So I kind of build a persona online, and I think have some respect as a collector and as an artist, maybe as a bon vivant.
Yeah. Honestly, 7,000 pieces is also super impressive. And I was going to say, I really like your insight already because I think it takes a lot of people who come on to talk about this space a while to understand kind of what it is that they're involved in. And I feel like
Right.
I'm not sure if you've contemplated on this before, but it sounds like you have and you have very profound like observations on it. I wanted to know also just kind of for us to get to know you better, but how was it that you found yourself at the final presentations of the residency exhibition? Was it that you knew Kay beforehand, or what was kind of the connection there?
It's like this world's still so small, and
Hmm.
people who have integrity and I think have, I'm not going to say taste, but you move in certain circles and you start to see people and you kind of look at what they've collected and you see some of their comments. And Kay was sort of on the edge of my world, and there were a couple other people sort of I had seen Linda. I'd been watching what they were collecting. And I was like, okay, because when there's new players in the scene, everyone kind of knows because you can see what they're collecting and kind of start getting a sense of what they're doing exactly. And then friend requested me at some point along the way, and we just started, basically said, I love some of the art you're posting on your feed. And we started a conversation that way. And then I'm in a collectors group thread. It's probably 30 collectors. And I admired his sense of humor and his intelligence. And at some point, he started making sounds about this upcoming event. And I was, much to my now regret, I didn't apply myself more to getting into the program. But that being said, there was amazing work that was done, and it was fine for what it was. But in the course of conversations, he and Sinbad and I had a couple meetings where it was kind of just a meet and greet, get to know each other. And I was sort of curious what their plans were, like what they were doing sort of generally, and
Yeah.
caught my interest. And basically, yeah, the event was coming up in Florence. And well, actually, I guess we should start with the end of the residency program. And I just love the global aspects of this scene. Like I'm in the middle of nowhere right now, literally in a town of like 800 people. If I could show you, it's just mountains and streams, and it's beautiful. It's kind of like, in certain ways, it's great for making art. In terms of the conversations around art and the sort of face to face, I don't get much of it. So a world like this and a situation like this was so rich in that I got to connect people I've had relationships with for years online. Actually got to sit down and have that face-to-face experience. And it was actually kind of surreal, frankly. Like Pokebelly, I've talked to, I don't even know how many times. And Kay and Sinbad and I had been on video chats, and I'd done some of that. But there's just something about IRL where, I don't know, it's visual cues with the person. It's much more, it just sort of anchors the relationship in a certain way. And so, and this is really that was the first event that I had made a point of. There's been peripheral things I've been involved in as a collector in different ways, but this was more of like, okay, I'm all in. I'm going to this event. I'm doing this thing, and I'm just so thankful I did, frankly, because it cemented a lot of ideas I had about the possibility of how this kind of world can work in the real world and what it looks like in the mechanics.
Right.
And also just, I love artists. I mean, so it's like, take a bunch of artists from all over the world and stick them in a fucking palace with a bunch of art and see what happens, you know? And the gallery, Digitale Refuge, is that how you say it? Refugio, was just absolutely impeccable. I mean, the quality of, and maybe we got spoiled in a certain level. Like maybe my first great digital event was the bar was just set so high in terms of professionalism, but also ease. Everybody was kind of accommodating and willing to sort of engage with everyone else on equal terms. And I think that was really fruitful. And even people who might not know as much or coming from other circumstances, they're curious about digital art. I think you really saw how it can translate for new collectors and for artists that are trying to be onboarded. So, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That was honestly
I'm like, thank you.
Yeah.
All the work that we put into this festival and getting like feedback, it's been really nice.
I mean, I can talk endlessly, so I'm letting you guys, like, there's probably specific questions you have. So just, I'm a bit loquacious. I can just keep rolling. So I'll throw it back to you and meet you in the middle.
Sounds good. Well, I did want to ask, as a collector, how do you go about like collecting your art pieces or discovering new artists or even like your artist relationships? Maybe you could go a little bit in detail about that if you feel comfortable.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. So having spent years in this world, I'm a pretty quick study, and also because I've been collecting regular art, and books, and I've just been a collector of things throughout my life. I'm a pretty quick study, so I know what I like. And the beauty of Web3, and specifically, I think the object platform, and
Mm-hmm.
hopefully, this will echo into other platforms as well. But specifically with that, it's like I can look at an artist I like, look at their entire body of work, then I can look at what they've collected under a collecting tab. So then I can, if I really like someone's work, generally our aesthetics are probably somewhat in the same ballpark. And if they're not, that's even sort of more fascinating. And
Mm-hmm.
so then I can just go to works they've collected, look at the people I like there, go to the people they've collected. Like you could just follow your kind of a threads through
Mm-hmm.
Web3 and find people you hadn't seen yet. And also, so that's one way that I look at a lot of new work. I also do spend a lot of time on social media. So, on X, I have a lot of friends that are posting work of people they've collected in the collectors groups I'm in. And honestly, the collectors groups, between the 30 or 40 people, we kind of cover a lot of ground. Like if there's new mints and there's like a lot of conversation about artists in the groups that a lot of artists actually don't even realize. So it's like people are watching to see if someone's releasing work consistently, if what their price point is, if it seems like overinflated, if it seems incommensurate with the amount of work they've done. Like, so there's a lot of discussion about influences too, whether or not it feels derivative or they're just outright ripping somebody else off, which you
Mm-hmm.
do see, it's not infrequent. So there's some of that. So a lot of friends recommendations, a lot of collectors groups kind of discussions. And then I just have a lot of artists I just collect. Like I'm going to look at every new drop they do because I like their work. And I've already collected, however many pieces I have of their kind of journey. Because what you see a lot, especially on chains that are not prohibitively expensive to mint on, is you see people finding their voice, much
Right.
like in the real world. But it's not so conscripted by, I have to go to a gallery, I have to get a show, I have to do the press. And sometimes that's a good thing because it forces people to really, I think about what they're doing and be a little more deliberate.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a mixed bag because sometimes you just get people throwing stuff up, not like akin to say rodeo, where it's just like throw stuff up as fast as you can and just sell it super cheap. And I think ETH you get to like 30 to $100 to mint. So people
Mm-hmm.
are like, oh my God. And even the process of minting, when you realize like, by the way, that text you wrote on there that you you missed that comma or you misspelled a word, it's there forever. So, there's just that process of getting your ducks in a row. So let's see. That's mostly how I collect. And then, there's bigger collections where you just know that there are historic collections. Like I look at the press, I kind of look at the critical response. So I think in the AI world, especially, like there's a platform that Alejandro runs called it's Fellowship, but Daily XYZ. And to me, they're incredibly thorough, and VerseWorks is incredibly thorough in their scholarship. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're approaching individual artists and shows as you would sort of in the regular art world with like a sort of historic analysis, a kind of how it fits into the canon. And so some of those pieces, the price point drives up, and so you're going bigger. You're looking at getting in at 500 to, a couple thousand. So there, you're a little bit more diligent as a collector because after you've spent God knows how much money collecting, and this is like a joke. It's what we all do as collectors is like the worst piece you ever bought for the most money. It's like a rite of passage, like
Mm-hmm.
some pudgy penguin or something that was like $1,200 and you're like mortified. But that had a lot more to do with like, I think making a quick buck. I think I've sold 4 pieces. I mean, I'm crazy. I'm a crazy person. Like It's like I'm not collecting to resell, maybe at some point, but I'm just collecting around certain ideas and certain artists that I think are undervalued or I think deserve the recognition.
Yeah.
Could you go more in detail about like what ideas you kind of, or I guess when you collect, you kind of also to a certain extent curate like what you are. So like, is there, I guess, like an intellectual proposal behind what you are collecting, or
I'm sorry, what was that? Is there a what?
like an intellectual proposal or some sort of like, ideas that you're like, I like this kind of art, or
Absolutely. I mean, there, as I was saying, there's sort of to me specific aesthetic paradigms. So,
Mhm.
like, I can situate, say, for instance, glitch minimalism in like a history of abstract expressionism or digital mark making. So, for me, the intellectual through line is that it's not, there's not like a break when you go to digital. It's now in the history of mark making. So when I'm looking at certain things, it's also I contextualize it like early ex mortal pieces to me are they're almost on the edge of being nothing. Like it's like this gossamer bit of digital chaos that floats through the emptiness. Like to me, they're very much in the line of say abstract expressionist rhetoric or aesthetics. So and I just like it. So there's that. And then, so there's that. And then you get into the AI, and like I've collected pieces like, that are the first text to image
Mhm.
cues. So they're historically significant. And I think that there are pieces within some of those paradigms that have direct lineage into the surrealist propositions and also are now with sort of AI agency and self direction are entering uncharted waters.
Mhm.
So they captivate me not only in terms of what the aesthetics are going to be, but also I think that they are part of the sort of chess game of art history.
Mhm.
So there's that. Then I mean, I also collect it's not just purely digitally native. So, like, I think, say, for instance, in the Middle East, like, I'm working with a woman right now from Iran, and she wants to release erotica, but she can't under like if her face is recognized or she
Mhm.
uses her name, she stands to be harassed or it's can be really have dire consequences. So we're going to work together. She's taking photographs where she's essentially like in public places and showing parts of her body and like pushing back against that kind of heavy-handed patriarchal control, and so I'll either obscure parts of her face or help her do that, and then we'll release together. But the point being, she can use traditional photography as a mode of expression and have a global community of support and feedback with other women or people, who are interested in some of those politics. And then you have painters in South America who might just be great painters or taking photos of the painting itself and just releasing that. And so for me, so I can look at things strictly on aesthetic principles based on the history of drawing, photography, dance, performance art, et cetera, et cetera. And then I also look at certain things based on like, are they digitally native? I have some friends that are collectors and will only collect pieces that are born of the digital medium itself. They're sort of purists in that regard. And I don't do that. I also collect poetry, and I think the poetry and music worlds have not fully embraced the possibility of the chain yet, and I think it's coming. I mean, Sasha Stiles and Anna Marie Caballero, they are the sort of stars of the system, but I feel like there's a lot of room for sort of private journals or releasing editions and bringing some of the more traditional arts into the fold, so to speak.
Yeah. I think it's kind of your answer was so fascinating because it literally hits both of what me and Nicole are focused on right now, which Nicole, her thesis is on censorship and how
Right.
technology can surpass that. And then for me, it's one of my main motivations at Primavera Digitale that I didn't really even know I was going to have when I first landed. was that I'm really trying to emphasize, provide more visibility towards poetry in the space.
Right.
So, I mean, as you were present, I minted like my first ever just
Right.
strictly text.
It's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm trying to I'm in talks with like Kaya from Mallow to sort of kind of do exhibitions with him and more poets in the space. And I had briefly interacted before with like Ana Maria online, and I know Sasha Styles. I've heard of her name before as well, and also like Celestial incorporates poetry into their work as well. And it's just for me, it's definitely one of my motivations is to bring these other arts. And then I've been in conversation with Nicole as well because she used to be a ballet dancer and kind of trying to
Back in the day.
back in the day and so
Awesome.
trying to incorporate performance arts as well, it's a conversation that we've been having and have had it in the back of our mind of like what is going to be a method of bringing that up here. Yeah, I think these conversations are what is important for us to as a culture kind of like begin setting the tone for what's to come. And I'm also just curious for you if you have any sort of like what you either think of the direction of the space moving forth, how it's going to unfold, or if you have any motivations yourself into what you would like to bring more to the forefront.
I would say, well, given the state of the markets
Hmm.
on numerous levels, the fact that the funny thing is, like, many of the artists on chain already went through like crypto winter, and to a certain degree, it becomes background noise, like as currencies fluctuate and artists kind of mint across chains. But at the same time, there are real world kind of consequences to sort of those whiplashing price points. And I think what's happening is as the foundation is becoming a little clearer, as more and more chains are embracing art as a legitimate part of their marketing and identity, much, like, it's astonishing that many chains haven't done this sooner, frankly, but it's been more of like there's spillover from currencies that are running hot and people just like throw money at their friends who happen to be on the chain, and there is just now beginning to be, I think, a sense more of museum interest, grad students coming out who are more invested in this more scholarly understanding, and also just like philosophically, there's no avoiding the fact that we are in a digital culture. Every kid under 15 has a phone. All of commerce and advertising, there's just so much that revolves and pivots around our online personas and what we do on screens. And the fact that it's still a surprise to people that art exists and has been minted and has been clarified and is being considered and in that form. Of course, I mean, it's just like bringing the public awareness to the quality of what's being done, but also educating them a little bit more about some of the things that may be more specific to digital aesthetics, I think, is what's happening. And so what I'm seeing is like these kind of in real, I think there need to be more of these events that sort of bridge the purely online world and actual events with screens, because it's like the same thing in theater. It's all the black box. Like you can do the same theater production in Barcelona as you can in Kansas. And to a certain degree, the screen is ubiquitous, right, across the globe. And
Yeah.
it's just about the portability of the screens and the portability of the images and getting images onto those screens that, for me, it's very simple. Like I can sit with people and show them 20 pieces of artwork and radically change their understanding of what digital art is. It's literally that simple. And then I realized that the majority of people have never had that experience.
Yeah.
And to me, I guess I'm so deeply involved in this world that I forget that, it's daunting, the like, okay, how do I get a wallet? If I'm going to buy, but that being said, like, there's still spillover on X and through the chains where it's like, an artist will show a piece, it gets 1 million likes, and then that spills over into sales. So I think we're going to see an intermixing even more. And this is what Rodeo was trying to capitalize on, and social media platforms as platforms for selling art is a kind of gray zone that people are trying to play with and figure out. So what I see is more, what I hope to see is more heads of chains, currencies, and platforms understanding the potential that exists within the structures to bring more art to the world, to create a culture that supports emerging artists and rewards people who have already put massive amounts of energy. So what often happens too right now is like there's new chains and new artists suddenly show up and they're like the belle of the ball for a minute. And there's literally been people who have been minting for 4 years, like struggling, who are making great art, but have zero recognition. So it's like these strange kind of uneasy kind of juxtapositions that I think are evening out slowly as more and more people begin to like look around and say like, okay, that's interesting. Let's look at that person's work. Let's look at that person's work. Let's look across chain. And oh, by the way, museums are suddenly like, they have new titles like Director of Digital Operations or Digital Outreach. And it's like, yeah, no shit. I mean, there's literally like 6 digital museum wings opening in the next year or two. So the simple fact is, however museum culture or art collecting culture gets to this world, that's what's kind of, I think, the interesting arena to sort of explore and maybe be deliberate about structuring in the next maybe 2 years. And I don't know, it's also just a fucking weird time because the politics right now are just such a mess. It's a little difficult for any kind of, I mean, to a certain degree, some people would argue that collecting art is like a luxury. That if you're worried about feeding your family, you're not going to go spend $800 on a digital art piece.
Right.
And that being said, at the same time, when you do that, or I've spent whatever $20 on a piece from somebody from Kenya, a photographer who literally is like, thank you, not only for collecting the art, but for like now I can feed my family for a week. You have to also keep in mind that there are many people in the global south throughout the world that selling a piece for $40 is like a significant event. And so it's weird because those kind of different worlds intertwine at these crossroads. And I think people forget the reality of like much of the world in their relationship to art too. And also what that does is when the minting costs are low, it also opens up the door for real time dialogue. I think that art's relationship to politics is a complex one. I don't like artwork that's necessarily purely didactic or sort of, I think that politics are inescapable and certain art deals with it more effectively than other art. But my point being simply that I feel like just being at this recent event, I spent an evening talking to a man from Yugoslavia. I spent the same time talking to, someone who's had an operation to become a woman, who's an English artist, who's talking to someone from Yugoslavia, who's talking to someone from Russia. Those are the kind of situations where people become part of a global village. And that's a new kind of politics to me that's born of aesthetic appreciation as opposed to like geographic specificity. And so I think in the future, those connections may have more value than we even understand currently. Because I think decentralization offers us possibilities of new alliances, new possibilities of wealth generation, of cultural exchange, of romance or like whatever it is, So I guess that's I don't know, I think I got and personally for me, it's like I'm just in this position of trying to get even pieces I've collected out more. So there's also this like, there's a couple software companies and people are trying to create algorithms where you showcase work from your collection into screens. And so I just think there's a lot more sort of emerging curatorial kind of stuff and where that meets the real world, traditional museum culture, traditional art culture. It's like step by step to get people to just understand the complexity and degree of work that's already been done in the digital world.
Yeah, no, I kind of wanted to go back to like your point about collecting and how I completely agree where there's this kind of idea that collecting is a luxury. But like what you said, it's true. It's if there's I think something that we need to bring not just to like the space, but like to like even the traditional art world is encouraging, especially young individuals like in our generation to like start collecting art and supporting artists and realizing you don't necessarily have to spend like $600 on like a
No,
painting. Like you can spend 20 and it's still something that is you and it's for you
And it's
and
meaningful.
it's
yeah,
meaningful.
absolutely. I mean, that's the beauty of some of these chains. Like, I mean, I've collected absolute masterpieces for like $3, or part of an edition. So it's even if like you're a new collector and you're just getting your feet in the pond. If you think about like buying, say, one of an edition of 100 that's say listed at 2 TES or like 0.06 sol or whatever it is, it's like that's what you would spend on a cup of coffee or like so there
Yeah.
is no bar to beginning to build a collection. And not only that, it also affords you the opportunity to collect to sort of find your way through what speaks to you, and and the beauty of Web3 is like when you collect a piece, you can literally send the artist a note and say, hey, like I really like your work. And frankly, I think at this point there is enough artwork of different aesthetics and different backgrounds that anyone who wants, I think any person who spends enough time on some of these platforms will find something they want to collect. Like
Yeah.
actually, as I was saying, like I can literally sit down with somebody and be like, okay, look at this, dunk, 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 and someone's like, oh my god, that's so cool. And I'm like, that's how you start collecting, right? And okay, maybe you need $10 in your wallet, and then and that leads to. It's funny because we go back to the Renaissance. What happens is you're literally putting money directly into artists' pockets, and that's a one-to-one relationship.
Yeah.
That's also sort of a miracle of this scene. Is like you don't have to go through an agency or this or that. Like literally, you're saying support your vision. There's also a community of like when people, and without leaning on it too much, but when people are in really difficult situations, oftentimes the community like comes together and tries to buy more work or support them the best way they know how. And
Yeah.
that's, I mean, I've seen that play out numerous times where it's not just like it's not an anomaly. There's a very supportive group globally of people who want to support other artists. And as the other thing is, as a collector, when you start doing that, it also opens the door to you reflect on like, hey, is there anything that I want to contribute to the conversation? Do I have and so it becomes a much more visceral, I think, immediate relationship to contemporary art than like I'm in a book reading about an artist who's dead. I like the work, and look, it's at Sotheby's for $6 million. It's like that's just so far outside people's wheelhouse. Versus like, here's a 19-year-old, Brazilian woman who's doing yada yadas, photographing people in the favela. And you're like, cool, for $3, I can get one of an edition of 10, and then literally 5 months later see that it's sold out and I can put it back on the market for resale if I want to. So, it's also actually a great education on how to trade.
Yeah.
If you want to go down that road, it's essentially sort of the equivalent of like trading stock. If you're just in it for the money, that's probably not a bad thing to pursue. I mean, there are plenty of people who do flip, mostly on ETH, and like they're short-term traders. They're basically short-term traders. They're day traders who are moving artwork, but there's enough volume moving through for them to do that, which also speaks to the fact that the market is supporting itself despite the antagonisms and bad press and shit show of the last 10 years. It's still going, and it's not going anywhere. And so for me, it's like back full circle. Like what I would like is, like, I've never seen a celebrity endorsement or
Right.
an like a legitimate agency like endorsing any of the thousands of artists that are on chain. I want to see film festivals put short MP4 like GIFs, MP4s. Like, this is an emerging arena. I'm sort of obsessed with GIFs because I think historically they're in between photography and film. And
Right.
it's literally specific to the era we're in terms of people's attention spans. And I think I mentioned that in one conversation that we had was there's this whole like sort of prognosis that we're all like, have suffer from ADD and shortened attention spans and nobody knows how to focus. And I'm like, okay, sure. Or we read information faster and we just don't care to have our time taken from us because there's things that are constantly vying for our
Mhm.
attention. And to me, like a GIF is akin to a photograph. It's like a visual proposition, but it gives me a little bit more, and that's enough. It's like a
Mhm.
quick, it can be a substantive meal, but in a very concise form. And I think it
Mhm.
does a disservice to dismiss that as some sort of pathology, you know? And so to me, like I love collecting GIFs and like 17 frame or 34 frame GIFs. I actually literally think it's a new art form, you know? So yeah, I don't know where that was going, but
That tends to happen. Don't worry. We
Yeah.
always get into like very like abstract or like random niche
Mhm.
conversations, and then we're like,
Yeah.
yes.
But I have to say, like, your perspective is also really refreshing because I feel like maybe it was just like the festival, like every day, kind of weird. I feel like I was just talking about the same themes over and over again.
right.
So it's nice to hear your like full developed thoughts on this topic and like kind of bring up a lot of points that I think are new or just again like well formed thoughts. And I don't know, I'm just kind of thinking about a lot of what you're saying about the antagonisms right now from like the outside world kind of towards this market that is thriving. And we had this experience at the festival, Nicole and I, where three artists came up to us and they told us that they were super grateful for this experience that they had because right now, given like the context of the markets and how it feels like everything is slowing down and the world is so uncertain, that there wasn't enough, I don't know, hope in the community, and they just really felt a little bit revitalized after the fact. I think that uncertainty is something that a lot of us are feeling right now, whether it's just in our immediate lives, like given, like, for example, Nicole and I graduating soon, or if it's just like the economic markets at the time and, politically, like no one kind of
Yeah,
knows
what's going on?
what's going on.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, on a positive note, no, no. Positive
Positive.
note.
The
I
positive.
mean, this is might be a little fucked up, but you know, I'm excited to see the art that comes out of like this time of chaos. Like
Yeah.
I don't know if you see.
Absolutely. And that's Frank, and to maybe toot my own horn a little, what I've been obsessed with, and I think this is specific to the world we're in, the digital world, like I love taking fresh media
Hmm.
and stripping it out of the discourse and bending it, breaking it open, sifting it, filtering it. We're in an era now with the technology where I can take an image of, say, the presidential speech with footage of a hurricane that's happening in real time. And I think back to my point about how this is a real time dialogue, like the fact we're doing this, like
Yeah.
we're in different parts of the world talking about contemporary events. And that's, I think, we don't quite know where that's going to take us as a global community artistically and otherwise. And so back to that, like that sense of real time relationship to public discourse, I think that's a very specific thing that's unique to our scene is we can literally, so also in that line, so the day David Lynch died, I
Uh-huh.
did a piece that's like was a memorial to David Lynch, minted it that day. So it's like it's sort of a token. I call them token memoriam. It's like a digital gravestone marker. But it's the point is it's in real time on the day he died. That's now lodged in that blockchain forever. And so these situations where we can fold our own commentary or artistic reactions back into public discourse in real time and mint them and release them through social media is also unprecedented in a certain way, especially
Right.
for artists, maybe more so in politics in different arenas. But I feel like that's a super exciting sort of arena
Yeah,
of
yeah.
discourse, and I do think it's important. Traditionally, artists, and that's why this event was fun, is to have that global discourse about what's going on, and not to get too, you know, I feel like some of my friends from South America and the global South were a little bummed about not being able to afford to come to Florence. And so I
Yeah.
do think as a community also, we need to make sure that people of color, women, trans people, like everyone has, it's not so much gatekeeping. I think we can have curation that's
Mhm.
specific, but it just needs to be reaffirmed that there's no barrier to entry. Like it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
they're just open doors, and even within our own community, I see people having arguments about politics and different things, and we're all very quick to say, "Hey, like if we can't figure this out as a small group of artists, like what hope is there for anybody?" Like I'm just saying, like let's raise the bar on our own awareness, about culpability and some degree of ethics and responsibility to being global citizens and like
Mhm.
having friends in situations where they can't afford to come to Florence or always remembering that the art can speak for itself, and that's part of the power of what art has always been is that it is a tool for anyone to speak their mind to power, to beauty, to, the big themes.
Yeah. I think that's something Nicole and I just recorded our like personal debrief of how we experienced the festival as well.
Right.
And one thing that we acknowledged too was the fact that because this was the first one, there was and it was in Florence, which is in Europe, and it's like kind of far to get to for a lot of people, that already there was this kind of filter put in place where there were a lot of barriers to getting there. And
Sure.
so, of course, the experiences that we had with everyone was amazing, but it was already people who maybe could afford to take time off work, had the resources to
Right.
come, XYZ. And so I think it is certainly important, like you mentioned, to kind of already instill this sort of code of responsibility or ethics that we have as global citizens, bringing these events around the world or just kind of fomenting something that's like, it is important for everyone to have their voice be heard and for everyone to be seen. And that just because we're doing it here now doesn't mean that we're trying to exclude anybody or ignore anybody.
Right.
But
And Kay is very upfront about that. I feel like and from the organizational end, it could be, there could be scholarships, there could be outreach, there could be programs to balance some of the wealth inequalities, and at the same time, it's like there will be other events in different parts of the world. So I don't feel like, yeah, we definitely, and I think it's good too because I think what happened in Florence is great because on a certain level, there's also been too much of there hasn't been a sort of fabulous kind of showcase of like how this art can also exist in some of those more rarefied circumstances. I mean, you have, on the other hand, you have like a hotel lobby with a couple pieces that are screens, or somebody puts a screen in the corner of the gallery. And so to me, I had some of the similar concerns about like, is this just filtering out people who aren't going to be able to like comfortable even navigating that more upscale spaces, but at the same time, artists love dressing up. Like, and it wasn't prohibitive. It's like prohibitive getting there, but the community just like finds a way. And
Yeah.
also, it's like sometimes you gotta pay the tax. You pay to play. It's like, it's Florence. Yes, it is expensive. Like, okay, I
Mhm.
get it. If it's somewhere else, it's not going to have the same bar of entry, and it'll be a different and equally exciting event that has its own logic. The logic of Florence is high Renaissance, incredible craftsmanship, incredible food. For me, it was a reminder of the power of art and the power of like what you can do when you're funded as an artist in terms of like making incredible architecture and pieces of art that become. It's funny because what happened in Florence is the art became the best marketing campaign for the city.
Yeah,
So it's
this
also just interesting, yeah, to understand how art functions as a tool of the identity of an organization, or like so in America, a lot of times a new building has to have 1% of their budget go to public art and things like that. And I think those are also arenas that can dovetail into the digital community again and outreach to people that don't have the funding. So but again, just to finish that, I think that I have seen a lot of reproductions of, say, this, you know the Carva or the Botticellis, or various pieces throughout my life, and you always hear this thing of like, no, the reproductions is never as good as the original. And in this case, that is 100% true. The amount of work and vision and sweat, blood, and tears that people have put into making art, it's a good reminder, because I also do think that we've lost a little bit of the sense of like a work ethic. Like,
Mhm.
I've worked with teaching pottery and poetry to kids and stuff, and it's like if the kid can't throw the pot after 20 minutes, they're like, give up. I'm like, hey, this is a lifelong process. You don't become a master painter overnight. You work for 30 years in a form, and then you commit your entire like being and soul and life to these forms, and consequently you make art that lasts for hundreds of years and speaks to what we are as a species. So to me, it was just a great reminder of where the fucking bar is on being an artist,
Mhm.
and respect for that process and the craftsmanship, and just a gentle reminder that we stand on the shoulders of giants, absolutely. And just the city of Florence itself, it's like the quality of just like, who would have thought you have a whole culture that pivots around ice cream, you know? I'm like, it's fine. Isn't it just ice cream? No, it's gelato, okay? And it's that gelato, and it's made with that. And it's like the attention to everything: the coffee, the gelato, the pastries, the gnocchi, the food, the fashion, the shoes, the leather. I mean, that old European engagement with craftsmanship and you know, with the history of the guilds and quality work. That there's obviously, it's a much more complicated story and how that plays out in the global culture and whatnot. For me, just something about the Italian character is just was really what's the word I'm looking for, like inspiring,
Mhm.
and also it was just like, wow, that is really good. That's, I mean, I'm like, I want to live on the beach, and for 6 months and read in Italy and work on my Italian.
Totally.
So yeah, and also I think the beauty is like there were plenty of artists too that weren't there that had work shown on the screen. So even when it's not like getting a plane ticket and getting there, it's like the beauty is hey, we just uploaded your piece, and there are people seeing it.
Yeah,
And so it's hard to have an argument with that, you know?
totally. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm like, no, I'm processing everything. I'm
Same.
like, I'm super entertained. It's like I'm listening to the podcast. What you're saying.
And let me think, can I just do a couple shout outs? I don't know how we are on
Yeah,
time.
go ahead.
Of course. Yeah, we're coming up close to an hour, but it's a long
That's
Let's
discussion.
see.
perfect.
I was just going to say Kaya was great. I want to mint something, maybe a poem. We talked a little bit about that. And then Bay Fragile and DDO, Devin Fuchs, Anna Renova, Anastasia, Gil Yildiz, Ruby was amazing. Kika is just like, and again, I have to say, I have known many of these people for a long time and had numerous conversations, and like getting the time with Pokebelly was just so outrageous, and we kind of, I could see how we could drive each other crazy in certain ways. We're very strong, we have strong opinions, and it was so great to have that friendship that's born of a love of this art, and then have it actually become like a real substantive friendship. It's like so cool, right? So anyway, shout out to Pokebelly, and I'm sure I think everyone made friendships that will be strengthened and continue in time. And I feel like the more events like this that happen, the more those will become even stronger. And that's even across to like the developer world, platform world, artist relations, and hopefully at some point with like branding and companies that, get that want to show up for like the cutting edge of culture. Um, Obviously, Sinbad, amazing. Kay and Sinbad. Oh, and Brenda and Rob.
Oh,
Just, I mean, they're just really intelligent, sweet people. Like I just had such a wonderful evening with them, eating late and drinking and just hearing stories of their life. And they're so cosmopolitan and like just friendly and like intelligent. I mean, obviously you lose a little sight of that when it's your parents and you're kind of stuck with that. But I'm just saying, like, I've traveled a lot and spent a lot of time with different people in different situations, and it was just a blast. It was just like a lot of fun and like in rewarding. It's like sharing worldviews. That's what like friendship
Mm,
is too. What else? So Linnea was great. Lisbeth, Devour, Primitive, who I bought a piece from, that I still have to pay for. I swear I'll do it this week. Jacob, he's a cool collector. Alex Mack, who I still want to look at her work. Post Screw
oh
is great.
my gosh, I love.
we need to have him on the
I
podcast.
know.
Yeah, and we got deep into film, uh, and that was really exciting. So
Mm.
yeah, so for me also just a bunch of new friends that keep in touch with. I have a bunch of work, photographs, and writing from the event that I've been super busy when I got back, but I'm gonna make work based on my experience there, and like all the strange demonic figures in the dome. It's like
Yeah,
this mixture of like horror and beauty and aspiration. I love all that.
that's the one thing I didn't get to do was I didn't climb the Duomo.
It's okay. We have to go
Well, there's always gonna be Florence. You can always come back.
Yeah, there's always going to be Florence for sure, and you should.
Yeah.
back. It's worth it.
I feel like after this trip, like it was so long. I think I need like a 5 year break from Florence.
Seriously.
And I can't smell wine. I
Oh my
actually
gosh, yeah.
can't.
I haven't been
I
able to drink
cannot
wine.
stomach it.
Oh, that is so funny. That is so. Did you buy any? Did you like? I got a suit. Pokebell and I both got suits, and I got some odds and ends. I got a bunch of books, some painting techniques, some
Mm.
postcards. I didn't go too crazy. I mean, did you leave Italy with something that's like? Did you go big on a piece of jewelry or clothing or anything?
Well, actually, for me, I collected an art piece. So that was my first big purchase.
Nice. From
Yeah.
who?
From Ruby Rhizome actually, and the
Nice.
transaction. I did it yesterday, but that was kind of for me. I think that was like my biggest purchase. So nothing like I physically took with me, but
That's
for
awesome. Was
me,
it a 1-to-1 or is it an addition? Which piece was
it
it?
was I think it was a one of yeah, just one of one. It was for the Libertad exhibition, the Art
Yeah.
Forgetting.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
and
Cool. Good moves.
yeah, it was for me. It was definitely an experience because it was like the first like real big art purchase that I've ever
Nice.
bought. And I just the second that I saw it in person, it just stopped me in my tracks. And I was like, I think it was like you who was around me or something. I was like, is this Ruby? Is this Ruby? Like I couldn't believe that. Because we've been like working with her in the residency
And we
and
were
we
all like
even
living in the same Airbnb and
yeah.
like
Right.
chatting, girl talk,
Right.
and then she was like,
I was like, hold on a second, like this just literally transformed something in me. And I just instantly connected to the piece and with her. And I remember telling her about it, and we were both like jumping around for joy, like woo. So yeah, I don't know, Nicole, did you take
What was
any
that? What was that minted on? Was that on? Was
on
it on
object?
Mellow?
Is on Bezos.
It was on. She minted that on Tezos. Awesome. That's great. Cool.
Yeah.
yeah, I think no, this trip I didn't. The thing is, I go to Florence like almost every year, and so
Mm.
I've bought plenty of things already. I've bought gold, I've bought clothes. So this one was I was like, I need to stop spending money and I need to
Yeah.
like work.
Dial it down. And you obviously went to the Uffizi at least, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you had a lot of pasta.
yeah, a lot
A lot of pasta.
and
Wait,
wine.
too much bread, too much focaccia.
Oh my God, the amount of bread. I know I started buying stuff at the markets finally. I just got back to like, I just want a mango. Let's tone it down. The last night that I was there, I went out with Kay and we actually went and had Chinese food.
Oh my god.
I'm like, we're in Florence eating Chinese food, but it was actually really good.
Nice.
Yeah, sometimes it's needed. Like I got back and all I had was like salad for 3 days. I was like,
Yeah,
I need like
totally.
Nutrients,
and
vitamins.
Mexican food. Like it was a
Ooh.
mix of salad and Mexican food.
Perfect. And I actually have to say, Lufthansa, it's just so funny. You come back from Europe, Lufthansa, like the meals were good. And never, like, good meals. Coffee was okay. Service. Then you hit like America and you hit United. My flight was delayed 2 hours. There was no seat. You can't get your luggage in there. There's like someone coughing on me next. It was just like, I just plummeted straight into like, no,
Yeah.
can I go back? But
Yeah.
it's fine.
I think the last time that I was in the States was like a year ago, and I don't even know. I never planned my return to the US. Like it just happens because I
Right.
don't look forward to going back. And I'm
So
so
where
sorry.
are you right now?
We're both in Madrid.
Envy.
Come to
And hold on.
Madrid.
Isn't there an upcoming? So there's another. This is Linda related. There's another event in Madrid, right? In like 4 months.
Well, to tell you the truth, since we're based here, there's always events that like
Which is
pop up.
nice.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But I think even like I guess insider information, I think next week we're doing like a 1 day little quick exhibition. And then
Fun.
in July, because a lot of since me and her are graduating in July, a lot of the collectors are gonna come to
Because they're
town.
like our friends and they're
Yeah.
just coming to
Fun.
party.
They're coming to party. So we were just like, you know what, why not kill two birds with one stone and like actually do a more serious exhibition in Madrid. So
Fun.
yeah.
We're looking into it right now, but I mean, the one that we want to do the next couple of weeks is since we're trying to onboard like more students and some of our friends that
And we need more women collectors as
yes, so
well.
something we realized really we need to bring more women into the space. It's going to be a bit more of like if we do something to be much more small, kind of intimate gatherings to like kind of expose
Yeah.
people to what digital art is, as you said. Like when you see it, you're like, oh, like this is actually really cool, and then you want to learn about the technology.
Right.
So it's kind of like what we're hoping to achieve with this exhibition.
Cool. Sounds great.
But if you're
And
ever in Madrid,
poetry.
yeah,
The poetry as well. Going That's a main intention I think for this year for me is to incorporate some of that. And yeah, super excited for it. So yeah, I guess I just, as we're a little bit over an hour, I want to thank you so much for coming on today and letting us just kind of like pick your brain for a bit. It's genuinely so fascinating to hear what you had to say about everything. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. So such a pleasure to talk to both of you. I appreciate the friendship and meeting you, and you're strong, powerful, intelligent women out there making it happen, and kudos. So yeah, anytime, and again, like it was great to hear your side of some of the experience too, and I'm sure there'll be more to come in the future.
Thank you everyone for tuning into Sundays Are for Contemplation. We're here every Sunday for you.
Almost every Sunday.
Almost every Sunday, whenever we feel like it, Sunday. Yeah, so I'm your host, Soph. This is Nicole and August. So thank you, everyone. Wait and
Wayne
hope.
Hope.
Wait and hope. Wait and hope. Thank you.